Hello and welcome back to Conquering My Collection and my third of 4 videos on the Criterion Collection box set, the Coca Trilogy by Abbas Kiarostami. And in this video we're going to be talking about the third and final film in the trilogy from 1994, Through the Olive Trees. And I've heard it said in special features on the Blu-ray also called Under the Olive Trees, but I quite like Through the Olive Trees. Now, I first saw this film 4 years ago. It was in the book 1,001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. I think I'd already started watching Kiarostami films. I can't remember which one was the first one I saw. I think it was Close Up. And Close Up is a really interesting film in the context of the trilogy. Not that it's related in any way, shape, or form, but Close Up was the first film where Kiarostami started blending truth and fiction. And he talks in the documentary on the Blu-ray, Truths and Dreams, that for him, whether it's a documentary or it's a fiction film, the kind of the heart of a movie, the heart of a film is lying to the audience to then glean the truth, which is a really interesting way of putting it, and I really like that. But in Close Up, he takes a real life situation and makes a movie out of it and makes it feel like a documentary and blends the lines and blurs the lines of what is true and what isn't, or what is real in front of the camera, and is anything real in front of the camera. So in And Life Goes On, his next film, the second film, the Coca Trilogy, he kind of uses that kind of question, the audience questions a little bit, like, is this a documentary? Like, is this parts of this real? The scenes when the father and the director is looking out of the car window and speaking to the people of Coca, like, is those documentary segments spliced into the real film? Who knows? And there's certainly, if you think about the fact that Kiarostami did apparently stand off camera and speak to some of those people, it almost feels like it is partly real, what you're seeing. But is it really because he's augmenting it? Who knows? But it's fun to kind of think about that and kind of work that into the context of those 3 films. In particular, the second one, as it gets more meta. The third film takes it down to another Inception level. So the first film, just about a young boy in the village of Coca trying to take his friend's homework book back to him before he gets expelled the next day in school. Just a nice little journey movie throughout the countryside of Iran. The second film is about the director of the first film going back to Coca to see if the 2 boys had survived a real-life earthquake that hits the area in 1990. The third film, Through the Olive Trees, is about the making of the second film, And Life Goes On. And in that film, there's a scene where the father, the director, he meets a young man called Hossein, who is a newlywed. And he got married the day after the earthquake, and they have a conversation about that. And why did you get married so soon after the earthquake? And this is this nice little scene, and there's nothing more to it, and the character never appears again. But the third film is about the actor who plays Hossein and the filming of that one scene. That's pretty much what the majority of Through the Olive Trees is about, and the drama that goes on behind the camera of the making of that scene. Because the actress who plays his wife, who again isn't really an actress, she's a local who's been brought in to play his newlywed wife, she doesn't like him. But he likes her, and he has propositioned her for marriage, and she's giving him the cold shoulder. Now, apparently in the true life making of And Life Goes On, Hossein and the woman who played his wife really didn't get on in real life, and there was a coldness between them. And Kiarostami saw that and then created this new story out of it, where, they're meant to be husband and wife in the movie And Life Goes On, and we see them making that movie in Through the Olive Trees. But he really wants to form a relationship with her, and he's holding on to this look that she gave him in the cemetery, I think it was, or a memorial graveyard of sorts. I think there was a kind of it was many different days of mourning for the victims of the earthquake, I believe, and he sees her there, and he'd seen her previously, and we get the backstory of that. But he's kind of, Hossein is, and I think her name's Temera, I think. And so he's very keen on her, but also makes it very clear to her that he isn't just interested in her physically. Like he wants to provide her with a good life. And there's this really interesting philosophy he has on it, which is that he believes that illiterate people should marry literate people, and he thinks that if 2 literate people marry each other, then no one's learning, and if 2 illiterate people marry each other, then nothing progresses. Whereas if 2 people from different backgrounds kind of come together, then they're able to help each other in different ways. And that's kind of his philosophy on life. And in the special features, you learn that Kiarostami was such a manipulative director, in a good way, I think, that he had talked about this this idea to the actor who played Hossein. I think his name is Hossein in real life. And then had mentioned it to other people so that they talked to him about it. And so by the time they filmed that scene, that conversation had happened with Hossein 6 or 7 times, to the point where he actually believed and had reinforced that idea in himself in reality. So he was able to very clearly express how he felt about it, but it was very much planted there by Kiarostami. Again, talking about Inception. And that was just really intriguing to me. And that's a really good scene when he's on the back of the truck with the director. Now, in Through the Olive Trees, we have another director who's playing the director of the second film. So we're getting into directorception now. But the actor who plays the director in Through the Olive Trees is a real professional, famous Iranian actor, which seems to be kind of a commentary on the fact that, you know, Kiarostami cast a non-actor to play himself in the second film, and now he casts this, you know, this very notable Iranian actor to play himself again, almost as a kind of a joke of sorts. And the beginning of the film fully breaks the fourth wall, where he says, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I play the director in this film." and then someone comes up and speaks to him, and then the film begins. And he's trying to find the right woman to play the newlywed wife. And we have I think her name was Shiva, maybe, the production assistant, this woman who kind of ferries around people and props and stuff on this pickup truck throughout Coca. And you get to see the 2 young boys from the first film, and it was really funny because I went back and watched my original review of Through the Olive Trees from 4 years ago, and I'm talking about there's these these 2 boys turn up with these flower pots and help out, and it's like those are the 2 boys from the first film. And now watching it for a second time, I have such a bigger appreciation for those little cameos and Easter eggs. And the teacher from the first film has a short appearance at the beginning. There is another cameo. There's many cameos, in fact, because there's one scene in particular where we have a flashback to when Hossein got involved in the making of the film And Life Goes On in the context of this film, which is it gets confusing, but we see him walking through these trees. And suddenly we hear someone say, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" And we cut to Hossein's point of view, and we see the sequence from the second film with the baby in the hammock. And we see the actor playing the director from the second film. And then in the background, we also see Kiarostami himself in a very brief cameo. So we're now seeing all the 3 different directors, the 2 characters and the real one, a non-actor, a professional actor, and the real deal. I loved all that little stuff, those little kind of details, I suppose, that were just so fascinating when you look at it through all 3 films. So when I first watched Through the Olive Trees, I thought it was a fantastic film in its own right. After seeing the first 2 just gives me a whole new appreciation for the smaller details, but I don't think it necessarily hinges on having seen the previous 2 films. It gives me a nice kind of cherry on the top, just to see those connections, but it doesn't necessarily kind of enhance the film in a significant way, I don't think. And I would almost say that all 3 of the films could be enjoyed on their own merit, and each of them have a beginning, middle, and an end. But I think that the overall scope of this weird story that's told throughout all 3, not that there's even a singular story, but there's it's a singular journey of one director who made a film in this random village called Coca, and through the real life earthquake and the circumstances, and through serendipity perhaps, ended up making 3 films there. And it's really this weird story in real life of these 3 films that got made in that area, and how they all interconnect. And so it again breaks through the barrier of the actual screen, and you then dealing with looking at the films from a real life perspective of how they were made and why they were made and all that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed the performance of Hossein, who once again is just an actor, not even an actor, he was just a guy that they found in the area. In fact, he was apparently the tea boy on the second film. And in the third film, you see him walking around with giving people tea, which is really interesting. It's like a nice little nod to reality there. But I loved Hossein, his performance in the film, because essentially, especially towards the end, he is hounding this young woman to get her to give him an answer about whether she'll marry him or not. And, this is a different part of the world, and it's not really how it works, where I'm from, where you propose marriage as this kind of opening gambit, But in countries like that, I suppose it's a lot more normal, traditional. Sometimes they're arranged, sometimes they're not. But the whole thing is that her family would not approve of him because he's kind of he doesn't have a house basically, and so his prospects are not incredibly high. Her family died in the earthquake except for her grandmother, and there's a sequence where he kind of pleads with the grandmother for her approval, and she's like, "There's no way, you're not suitable for my granddaughter, and you don't have a house," and all this kind of stuff. But she never speaks to him in at all throughout the film, except for I think in the filming of the scene from the second film, which is a whole sequence unto itself. But towards the end, he's literally just like following her and saying, "Will you marry me? Like, can you just give me an answer and stuff?" And he's like, "God, you're so difficult." And she says nothing. She completely blanks him the whole time, and she could just turn around and say, "No, I don't want to marry you." And you feel like this guy would accept. But I don't know whether Kiarostami just cast it right or saw that he would be able to pull off this kind of character. But it's, you put that character in a different body, in a different kind of series of mannerisms, and it becomes a very creepy, kind of inappropriate thing where he just keeps, kind of forcing his proposition on her. But the way that he speaks, the things that he says, his face, he looks like he has a kind face, and he talks about in the film how, like, I'm a kind person. And the grandmother's like, "Well, you may be kind and considerate and sensitive, but you don't have a house," and that's kind of important in this situation. But, I never feel like he's being super inappropriate. One, because it's a different kind of world, and I kind of have to readily accept the fact that proposing marriage is more of a normal kind of almost "will you go out with me" kind of thing. But also it's, the way that they view how their lives should be, and having a family, and kind of finding a partner and a mate, and kind of putting together a family and a life and stuff is done in a different way there. But I think that just looking at his face and the way that he acts, something about him is very non-aggressive, even if the dialogue that you're reading, which you can't really understand the language, it didn't feel as forward as, because I think I mentioned in my first review of this, it almost turns into a stalker movie by the end. But because you can look at it from that sense, and it really is not a pleasant movie if you look at it like that. But I think he pulls it off in the way that his performance relays, the kind of person that he is, and the way that the things that he does throughout the film, and you kind of get to see who he is through the way that he talks to other people and things like that, and the stories that he tells. And I liked his relationship with the director, who kind of takes him under his wing a little bit, and you can tell the director is kind of invested in this potential romance. And I love the actor who played the director. Such a great character, really. He's got a large figure, and he's got kind of a large personality, but there's a tenderness to him as well. He's got this great character. His face just has really good character in it. I don't know, just this beard, and there's just texture to his face. I don't know what it is. You just feel like this is someone who has a lot of experience, which is very handy in a character who's a director, and he's kind of putting together things. Now, the sequence when they're shooting the scene from the second film is so interesting and frustrating, because things keep going wrong. So it's like, okay, take two, action, and we follow the scene. They go through it, and then Hossein messes something up, like, "Stop. You said the wrong thing there. You said the wrong number. So let's just go back and do it again." So they go back and they do it again, and we watch them do the whole scene, and he says the wrong number again. "Stop. You said the wrong name again," or the wrong number, I should say. And it's just frustrating. Like, oh my God, like, how many more times are we gonna have to see this? But it's putting you in the shoes of, like, a director making a film and dealing with difficult actors, and dealing with a certain actor who can't perform in the scene because he can't speak to girls without stammering. And I loved the way that it looked at making a movie, which again is a lot different, when you're talking about a film that's made in the Iranian countryside than, say, a Hollywood production or a big budget studio production. But just the problem solving from the production assistant trying to get the young girl playing the newlywed wife to wear a certain type of peasant clothing and not something more modern, and all these things, and even down to the flower pots, and like, we've got to get the flower pots transported and make sure that they don't get crushed, and who that one's going back to that family, that one's going back there, and all this stuff that's being shepherded around by this woman who's trying to keep everything going. I loved all that stuff. I really did. And then I was really invested in that kind of story between Hossein and this young woman who was playing his wife, and just the lingering on her with the book. And and again, I would say that the second film is probably the film that looks the best, because it's kind of set during that kind of golden hour towards the end of the film where like there's this beautiful kind of, the sun is setting and it's a warm feeling, whereas Through the Olive Trees is like very overcast and grey and windy and chilly. But there's a beauty to that as well, and I really love the cinematography of this third film. It's the one film out of the three that looks the best on the Blu-ray. I think it came from a 4K restoration, unlike the other two, which might say, yeah, 2K digital restorations of all three films, but I think it says in the booklet that the third film did come from a 4K source, and I do have the booklet here, so I could just double check that for you without dropping the disc, because I did take the disc out of the case so you can see the artwork on the inside, should you choose to look behind me at the cover at any point, which you might not. So here's the booklet, and it should say at the back here something about the transfers. I think I've already read this in the Blu-ray roulette video. Yeah, so Through the Olive Trees was created in 4K resolution from the original camera negative, so it just looks phenomenal. But the ending scene is really great. The kind of the long shot of him running out, through the olive trees and then over to her in the distance. It goes on for so long, but you're kind of like, what's going to happen? Are we going to see anything? Will we know anything that's happened? And it ends on that ambiguous note, which I think is kind of unambiguous in a way, but you can look at it in different ways if you want to. And I just think overall it's a fantastic film, and there's just so many things you could say about it. There really is, and it's just so innovative in a lot of ways. I mean, there's been many films made about the making of films, and there's many of those I haven't seen, but I just like Kiarostami has a very straightforward approach to things, and the way that translates to showing a movie being made was very matter of fact, but at the same time kind of a little bit complex, but playful as well, and seeing the two young boys from the first film hanging out in the background, and there's these little digressions throughout the whole film as well. And I enjoyed, because I was thinking about how they brought back the guy who played the director in the second film, but not the son, Puya. And I thought, well, he'd be a little bit older then, so he wouldn't match how he looked in the second film. But there's a little like audio cameo where he's calling out his son's name and you hear him off screen. So that was a fun way to include it. I don't know if they actually got him back to do the line or not, but it felt like almost like a reunion at times, the third film, of getting some of those people who'd appeared in the first and second film to kind of come back for brief moments. And there's even like the person who's filming, the shot is the real life cinematographer of the film, and I think that there is a cameo from another Iranian director who worked on that film and then went on to be a director in his own right. But even outside all of those little real world kind of, peeling back the curtain moments of Easter eggs and things like that, I think that just as a story itself, it's just the drama that's going on behind the scenes of making a movie. It's a great sequence where Hossein and the director are just on the back of a truck. It just goes on and on. They're just sat there chatting about stuff, and obviously about the situation and everything, and you get a lot of that backstory. But I just sometimes love sitting with characters in cars as they drive through landscapes talking about things, and you just get to see the kind of the greenery whizzing by, and you're kind of listening to it, and in the case of me, reading what's going on and what's being discussed. And it's always interesting. I don't know whether, if I could write dialogue that natural and interesting. I think I can write natural dialogue. I don't know if I could write interesting dialogue, but I feel like there must be like an art to it, because there's so many like moments of dialogue in this film that feel very throwaway and very something you'd hear in real life, but it's never boring. It always seems to keep my attention in some way, shape, or form, and I don't know whether that's just really good writing, or whether that's just my sensibility, or whether it's my commitment to enjoying it because I like all the other elements, maybe, perhaps, I don't know. But yeah, so Through the Olive Trees, I've kind of already talked about it 2 times now in a video on my channel, so I feel like I'm kind of exhausting my thoughts on it, I suppose, and there's probably more that I could have mentioned that I've forgotten already, even though I watched this maybe a week or 2 ago. But, seeing this film again in like high definition, in such good quality was really a gift, because the first time I saw it was in such bad quality, and I felt like it would be a film that would really, well, I think any film would benefit from really good quality, but this one in particular, some of the countryside and things like that, and I'm really glad that the rights were sorted out and Criterion put together a really great, package for this film, for these 3 films, in terms of the way they look, the way they sound, but also the extras, which I'll talk about in the final video of this little mini series on the Coca trilogy. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that, where I'll talk about the extras on the box set and my final thoughts. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.